One thing that you may want to be able to do as you are working on securing your Linux installations is be able to figure out what ports are open on remote systems. This is something called port scanning, and the best tool that is widely used for this particular activity is actually something called nmap. We're just going to do a couple of fairly basic ones, and I'll walk you through the settings here. So first of all, I need to have administrative privileges, and then I'm going to run nmap. What I'm going to do here is a SYN scan. This is sometimes called a half open scan because I'm going to send a TCP SYN message. I'll get a SYN ACK back, and then I'm just going to send a reset back. I'm not going to actually fully open the connection. I'm just going to send a SYN and then see what I get back for a response. Now, I can do -v for verbose, and let me just say 172.30.42.1 here. And this is going to tell me what it's doing as it goes. That's the -v. If I were to do it without -v, it would just give me the results, which would be this right here when it was actually done. So the other thing I can do, and I'm going to drop the -v at this point, is I can crank the throttle up. If I go T5, it's going to go as fast as it possibly can, and then we should just get really quick results back as a general rule. What we're doing here is we're testing about 1,000 ports. That 1,000 ports are really the commonly used ports. If I wanted to test a specific port, for example, I could do -p80. You can see that's up. If I wanted to test a couple of ports, I could say 443 and then 1089 and 8080, for example. So I'm only going to check those ports. The other thing I can do is actually scan all ports, and I can say -p0 through 65535, which is every single port, or the quicker way of doing that is just -p- or -p-. That's going to scan every single port. Now, the other thing that I can do while I'm doing my SYN scan is I can do an operating system scan and actually try to figure out what operating system is running on the remote end. So this is going to do my port scan for me, and then it's going to do some checks as it goes to see what kind of responses it gets, and then it will check a fingerprint database that it actually has and be able to determine what the operating system on the remote end actually is. This actually is pretty accurate. It says it's a Motorola surfboard, and that's what it is. This is my router on my local network, or my cable modem slash access point slash router. That's actually pretty accurate. The fingerprints on nmap are pretty good. As a general rule, they will hit most of your systems pretty well here. So what I did was just a single IP address. I could scan the entire network. So I could do a /24. That's my entire network here that I've got. And that's going to scan all of my hosts to figure out which ones are up. And the ones that are up, it will actually do a port scan. Again, I didn't feed it the -p, so it's just going to do that roughly 1,000 well-known ports. This could actually take a while. I'm going to kill this, and we're going to hop over to a different kind of scan here. And I'm going to go back to my .1. Let me get rid of the OS scan. Let's do a UDP scan. So -SU is UDP. That's also going to hit about 1,000 ports, and those are well-known ports. Now, UDP is different than TCP. With TCP, I do a handshake. So there's a well-defined pattern that we go through when we are making a connection to a system. With UDP, that's just not the case. On a closed port, I am going to get an ICMP port unreachable message. On an open port, I don't know what I'm going to get. It will depend on the application that's running. I may get no response. On the other hand, if the request message from nmap has been dropped, I may similarly get no response. If for whatever reason the network just loses it or there's a firewall in the way, it may just get lost, which would mean no response. If there's no response, I got to retransmit because I can't guarantee what that actually means. UDP scans often take quite a bit longer than TCP scans. Again, depending on what's in the way. If obviously we're getting just a lot of closed ports, we're going to get these ICMP port unreachable messages back, and it's going to go pretty quickly. If I've got a lot of open ports, not getting a response back, as I said, isn't really meaningful. So we got to keep sending messages. So that constant retransmit can actually be time consuming. So nmap is a great port scanner. You can use it for TCP, UDP. There are a number of different types of scans. These are probably the two most common. It's a SYN scan and a UDP scan. As I said, you can do an IP address, you can do an entire network range and figure out what's on your network.